Welcome to a Fantasy Goodfellas live stream. We haven't done one of these in a while, but I wanted to kind of give the opportunity for anybody to kind of suggest, ask some questions. We always see you guys in the comment section asking us to compare a couple players, so that's what we're going to do. So hold on, we're just going to do a quick intro. We'll come back and get started.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.
The Fantasy Goodfellas.
All right, we're just going to slowly go through this. This is a live video, so if we make a couple mistakes, you'll know why. I'm kind of a stat guy. I like seeing a lot of graphics, and that's what I've made. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slowly go through this. I might try to not cough on camera. We're just going to try to go through some stats. So let's get started. If you have some comments, put them in now, because I know people ask, and we try to do good. Last week it was all about the quarterbacks. We got a lot of comments for the quarterbacks, which ones we should start, and I did pretty good. So let's get started on this week's wide receiver rankings. So the first thing we want to talk about is at number 1, Tyreek Hill. He'll be home versus the New York Giants. Now the problem I see with Tyreek Hill is everybody thinks that he's just destined to be number 1 each week. That Miami offense was on fire, right? They came up with the name from themselves. It was the greatest show on surf. But look what he did. He almost had 220 receiving yards in week 1, dropped off in week 2. Week 3, he bounced back, had over 150. Week 4, dropped down again. So touchdowns. Let's look at what we're doing with touchdowns. 2 touchdowns week 1. Week 2 and week 3 only saw 1 touchdown and no touchdowns in week 4. So just because you're Tyreek Hill doesn't mean you'll always be a number 1 wide receiver. But you always see that. But, we always know if it's Tyreek Hill, you're going to be starting him no matter what. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson will be he'll be up there. He'll be home versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Jefferson, he was the 5th ranked wide receiver in week 4. How did he do that? 2 touchdowns and 85 receiving yards. Overall, though, that Minnesota offense took a step back as Cousins only had 139 receiving yards. Those passing yards, only 2 TDs for Cousins. They went to Justin Jefferson. But you got people like TJ Hawkinson who didn't do too well. That's what we kind of get scared about when we kind of see these predictions. But, it's Justin Jefferson, so you're always going to start him. Number 3, Davante Adams will be home versus Green Bay Packers. How did Davante Adams do? He was outside the top 30. Anytime you see a wide receiver outside the top 30, shouldn't scare you, but if you have 3 wide receivers, that's where you have 3 wide receiver spots, right? You got 2 starters and you got a flex spot. Is he good enough for the flex spot, giving you 7 points? Yes. I think you're looking for those breakout stars and those breakout matchups. But overall, with a backup quarterback, he had 238 passing yards, but that didn't go too well. It was definitely a step back, but it's Davante Adams. Number 4, Jamar Chase at the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I see some problems here with that Cincinnati Bengals team, right? I mean, Joe Burrow's not playing well. Now you got Jamar Chase coming in there and talking to the media and saying he's open every play. And so seems to be a little controversy between Burrow and Jamar Chase. And if you're a Jamar Chase owner, you expected Jamar Chase to have many, 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 many more points than he's scoring this season. And that's hurting you. He's not helping you win games. He's actually costing you a few games. At number 5, you got Cooper Kupp coming back. That's why these videos matter, is sometimes we forget that Cooper is coming back. Now, how is that going to affect that Los Angeles Rams offense? Well, Stafford played well, and you have Puka Nacua was the beneficiary in week 4. 9 catches, 163 yards, and 1 TD. Now, how is he going to do when Cooper comes back? Not as good, right? You expect the ball to be spread out a little bit more. You expect Cooper Kupp to be targeted a bunch. So, obviously, if you're Puka Nacua, you understand you're going to be taking a step back a little bit. He's not going to give you that points for this week's matchup. At number 6, Stephon Diggs versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, you're starting Stephon Diggs. Why? In week 4, he gave you 120 receiving yards, 3 receiving TDs. Ain't going to happen this week, I can tell you that. Nobody is that consistent. But overall, this season, he's had over 3 games of 100 yards, and he's had 4 touchdowns so far this season. And it's Stephon Diggs, though. You're starting him. So that's why some of these predictions really don't matter. And if you're watching, don't forget you can put your questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer them or show you some stats from some people. But it's Stephon Diggs, so you're going to be starting him regardless of what these rankings do. Number 7, A.J. Brown will be at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, ever since A.J. Brown was caught on the sidelines yelling at Jalen Hurts, he's gone off. Now, what you're worried about is a Devontae Smith owner. How's that looked since A.J. Brown complained? Well, that was in week 2. Now, in week 3, he was the 78th ranked wide receiver, and in week 4, he was the 30th, almost missed the top 30. So that's something to pay attention to moving forward. They're trying to feed A.J. Brown. Don't blame them. At number 8, Puka Nacua home versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is what we're talking about. If Cooper Kupp comes back, a receiver like this is going to be affected. How that gets spread, I'm not sure. But Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback. Look at this, 14 rushing yards. That cracks me up. But obviously, Puka is going to be affected. And Tyler Higbee, he would probably be listed as a top tight end, just with those 64 yards, you can tell. But obviously, this team's going to be affected by Cooper Kupp's return. At number 9, Amon-Ra St. Brown home versus the Carolina Panthers. You can only throw the ball so much to so many different targets, and Jared Goff has been playing well. And this is where I don't think anybody saw David Montgomery scoring 3 times in week 4. That's kind of surprising, right? 3 touchdowns, that just ate away to anybody else scoring. But Amon-Ra St. Brown got into the end zone. That's a good team. I just don't expect this week that David Montgomery is going to take 3 touchdowns into the end zone or 3 rushes into the end zone. So the ball got to be spread out a little bit much. At number 10, Deebo Samuel versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I knew Ayuk is on this list. I think he's ranked 14th in predictions, but they're going against that stellar Dallas Cowboys defense, and that's the part that scares me. Is you got Christian McCaffrey scored 4 touchdowns. You're going against the Dallas defense, and now you expect to see 2 wide receivers in the top 14? I don't think it's going to happen. So which is going to be affected? Is it Deebo Samuel or is it going to be Brandon Ayuk? That's what you're going to need to pay attention to. But, we got our first question here. I just traded Swift for Richardson. I'm assuming the quarterback. My QB was Goff, and running back room is Aaron Jones. Saquon Najee. What do you think? If you can kind of clear up that question, trying to do this video. I just traded Swift for Richardson. My QB was Goff, and running back is Aaron Jones, Saquon, and Madison. What do you think? Well, Richardson was the second best quarterback. Let's see if I can get there. Richardson was the second best quarterback. This is where we're going to use quarterback. Okay. Richardson, where is he listed? Anthony Richardson. So Anthony Richardson in week 4 was the second best quarterback in week 4. So overall, as that team, you're looking at who's his targets. Got Michael Pittman. I think 3 total TDs. You have 256 total yards. So that bodes pretty well. And I think the running backs is what you're kind of hurting on, right? So you got Aaron Jones, Saquon, Najee, and Madison. So let's see how they did. If I can pull up the rankings in a different video. Let's see if I can. Let's see here. I'll try to pull it up, but I think it's your running backs that you're going to need help on. And we're going to go back to this list here. We're going to go back to wide receivers. We're going to go back to 10 in week 5. So top wide receivers. So week 5. So put a question in there. I'll try to show you some stats and stuff like that. But we're going through this. Again, Deebo Samuel is going against the Dallas Cowboys, and so far the Dallas Cowboys has been a very strong defense. It's going to be hard. At number 11, CeeDee Lamb at the San Francisco 49ers. CeeDee Lamb, did pretty good, got into the end zone, and this is what he looks like. So when it comes to yardage, doesn't seem to be getting the yardage. Got into the end zone last week. And I guess what's happening with Dallas is they don't have to do too much when they got a good defense. So that means their running backs are going to get a lot of usage, right? So you got Tony Pollard, you got 8, 11, 22, 24 rushes. And Dak Prescott only had 34 passes. So they don't have to do too much. And that's what I worry about some stats here is when you got somebody like Dallas and the good defense, you're not getting a lot. So CeeDee Lamb seems to be a little high just because he only got into the end zone once. Going against San Francisco, it's going to be an interesting. But it's CeeDee Lamb. You're going to be starting him regardless, right? At number 12, Garrett Wilson at the Denver Broncos. Now, I really like this matchup. If I was in Las Vegas, I probably would put some money on this game. Not sure the over-under in yards or scoring, but they're going against that Denver Broncos defense. And if you look, Zach Wilson, he got a lot of support from a lot of different people, a lot of people in the NFL and a lot of people in the sports world outside. So he's getting a lot of love. He's going against that Denver Broncos defense. I expect Zach Wilson to do better than he did in week 4. And Garrett Wilson, I believe, is going to light it up. So that's an interesting matchup. Can Lazard continue that? Now, in my league, I dropped Lazard. And that kind of hurt me. Now you had, 61 receiving yards and 1 receiving TD. Now I drop him. Wilson's gaining confidence. It sucks to be me, but I think we all go through it, right? You're trying to figure out who can kind of get into the end zone and get you some points. At number 13, Jalen Waddle, home versus the New York Giants. Now, Waddle just doesn't seem himself this season. I haven't done any research to see if he's injured. But he's just not cutting it. And even as a second or third string starter on your roster in the flex spot, you got to be worried about putting Waddle in there. He ain't giving you the points. So Waddle might see the bench on your squad, and I'd be curious to see. I'm curious to see how he did. But look, this is why I all these rankings are about name brands, players that we know. Jalen Waddle's 13. He hasn't been that high all season, I think. So now you're going to put him at 13. I don't like it. And if you're a Jalen Waddle owner, be careful. At number 14, Brandon Ayuk, home versus the Dallas Cowboys. This is where Brandon Ayuk had an awesome game. But you're going against that Dallas defense, and, he did all his off of the yardage, right? 148 receiving yards. But it's Christian McCaffrey who's getting all the love. 27 touches in that game. Way more than Brock Purdy threw it. So it's going to be interesting. And you're going against that Dallas defense. I don't see two San Francisco wide receivers in the top 15. At number 15, Calvin Ridley at the Buffalo Bills. Now, Buffalo's kind of really coming off that high after kicking the greatest show on surf, but Calvin Ridley did get into the end zone, only had 38 receiving yards. Buffalo's defense looked good. It's just Trevor Lawrence needs to get on board. He's got to pick it up this season. And Evan Ingram did pretty well as well. But that Buffalo defense looked good. I don't know if they can continue that, but Calvin Ridley, I expected to give you some points, probably about that 8-9 points in standard scoring, but nothing like week one. In week number 16, Devontae Smith at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, we mentioned this with A.J. Brown. He's been affected ever since A.J. Brown was yelling at Hurts. Can you depend on him moving forward? He's one of those wide receivers that you got to think about benching. I mean, he's a good wide receiver, nothing about that, but if he's not going to get over 100 yards and a touchdown, he's on the bench list. Number 17, Jerry Jeudy, home versus the New York Jets. Now, Russell Wilson is the star of this Denver offense, right? 223 passing yards, 3 TDs, spreading the ball out, and I think that's what's hurting everybody, right? Is you're not having these stellar standout performances. They're getting into the end zone. They're getting some 50, 60 yards, but that's not going to win you games. And you got to consider if you can depend on that. So I don't know if we're really depending on. Let's look at Courtland Sutton. I know he had a good previous week. What week was that? He's just right outside. He's out of the top 25. So you just got to, with the Denver offense, you got to be concerned about. Nico Collins at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Nico Collins, 2 touchdowns, 168 receiving yards. In week 4, he was third-ranked wide receiver. That bodes pretty well. How has he done all season? 3 games over 80 receiving yards. He scored in 2 of the 4 games, and that's his points total. You've picked up Nico Collins pretty late in those draft, right? And now he's probably a standout to you. So that's looking very well if you're a Nico Collins owner. This is DeAndre Hopkins. This is the one that really pisses me off. Every week he's in the top 20. And, he's not cutting it. 63 receiving yards. I just think we need to give up on him. He hasn't been in the top 30 at the end of any week. So let's start giving up on DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe he's got some trade value for somebody that's got a lot of running backs and no wide receivers. So you got to consider that. And number 20, Chris Olave at the New England Patriots. Chris Olave, he isn't cutting it. Now you got Carr hurt. Don't know what to expect on that. And number 21, DJ Moore at the Washington Commanders. Now, Justin Fields, this was, again, DJ Moore was going against the Denver Broncos defense. Now, that is why everybody was feeding in week 4. Not sure you can expect that again in week 5. But in week 4, they all were eating. They all were feeding. And number 22, Marquez Brown, home versus the Cincinnati Bengals. This should be an interesting matchup just because it's the Cincinnati Bengals. And Joshua Dobbs. Wow. No need for Tyler Murray to come back, right? Got a little controversy, quarterback controversy. Maybe we'll see Kyler Murray traded. That's got to be on people's radar. But Marquez Brown in week 4 had 96 receiving yards. We'll go through some of the bottom feeders. Cortland Sutton, home versus the New York Jets. Where was that? Number 24, George Pickens, home versus Baltimore. You got Trubisky coming back, and now you're still ranking Pickens high. That's questionable. At number 25, Christian Watson at the Las Vegas Raiders. He got into the end zone. Didn't have a lot of touches, targets, receptions, yards, but he got into the end zone, and that's why he was in the top 30. Do you expect him to get into the end zone this week? Not sure. Number 26, Terry McLaurin, home versus the Chicago Bears. Sam Howell. Gotta like what Sam Howell's doing in Washington. 320 total yards, 1 TD. A lot of people are touching the ball. You got 1, 2, 7, 9 different players touching, getting a reception. That bodes pretty well. Number 27, Christian Kirk at the Buffalo Bills. Now we got 2 Jacksonville Jaguars receivers in the top 30. That's questionable. He was 28th, and Calvin Ridley was 18. So they did it in week 4. Can they do it again? Not sure, but that Trevor Lawrence needs to pick it up. At number 28, Michael Pittman Jr., home versus Tennessee. This is where Anthony Richardson, 11 receptions. Now, is that his fault? 25. So you look at it, 1 catch, 2 catch, spreading the ball. Must be some quick drop-offs. Might not be throwing the ball down the field much. But I don't expect Michael Pittman to be in the top 30. And 29, Adam Thielen at the Detroit Lions. And if we look at here, you have Thielen had 6 rushing yards, 76 receiving yards, and he just got into the top 30. So how has he done? On week 3, he was the 5th ranked wide receiver. Got into the top 30. Probably could do that again. And at number 30 is Zay Flowers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he did that with 56 receiving yards. He was the 51st. But the Baltimore Ravens offense is looking much better. They're getting into the end zone, spreading the ball out a lot. It's just who's going to be the star, who's going to be the stud, and that's questionable because that ball is getting spread out. But not a lot of receiving action, right? You got a lot of running backs, quarterbacks running, even the backup quarterbacks running. So I expect this to really who lights it up. And Mark Andrews was the tight end who got a lot of the attention. Zay Flowers is good. He definitely looks like the number 1 receiver in Baltimore. So that's going to bode well. And that's going to do it. We don't have a lot of questions on here. So we'll take a look at it later if you put any comments in there. And that's what this live video is supposed to do, is just kind of slowly walk us through some of these players. All right. Thanks for watching.